welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be looking into a really unique part of American history. We're talking about free thought and how it grew among Czech immigrants at the turn of the 20th century.
You know, it's fascinating. These communities had such a profound impact, and they helped shape social change in America. They left a lasting mark, from their community halls to their cemeteries, and even on movements like women's suffrage.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing when you think about it.
It really is.
You don't really hear that much about it, It's not really common knowledge.
Not at all. And what's really captivating is how deeply rooted this free thought movement actually was.
Yeah.
To understand its impact in America, we really need to go back to the Czech lands when they were under the Habsburg Empire.
Right.
So for centuries, there was this immense pressure to conform to Catholicism.
Ah, I see.
Which often clashed with the Czech people's own identity and culture.
So it sounds like back then, even questioning the church was pretty much unthinkable.
Exactly. It really was. But even in this climate of, strict religious control, there was a spark of resistance.
Oh, okay.
And this is where we introduce Jan Hus, a 15th century reformer.
Right.
He actually dared to challenge the authority of the Catholic Church.
Wow.
He promoted literacy and translations of the Bible into the Czech language.
Interesting. So he wanted the people to be able to actually understand what was being said.
Exactly. And, his ideas really resonated with many Czechs. They started seeing him as this symbol of independent thought, rational inquiry.
But I'm guessing challenging the church back then didn't really go down too well.
Sadly, no. Hus was deemed a heretic,
right,
and he was burned at the stake.
Wow.
But his martyrdom, it actually fueled even more dissent. It's like he became this powerful symbol of resistance against oppression.
It's like the more they tried to suppress it, the stronger it got.
Exactly. And his ideas, they became really intertwined with Czech identity and this pursuit of intellectual freedom.
It's almost poetic in a way.
Mm-hmm.
The attempt to control thought actually gave rise to this whole movement centered on free thinking.
Exactly. It's amazing, isn't it? It's a real testament to that enduring human desire for intellectual freedom.
I agree.
And, this historical context is crucial if we want to understand why these Czech immigrants, they brought these strong free thought ideals with them to America.
It makes sense. It's like they were escaping one reality and hoping to build another.
Absolutely. They saw it as a chance to not only escape religious oppression, but to actually build a society where their values could truly, flourish.
I can imagine coming to America after that whole experience. It must have felt like a breath of fresh air.
Oh, absolutely. For them, America wasn't just this land of opportunity. It was like a blank canvas.
Oh, fresh start.
Yes. A blank canvas where they could paint their vision of a society built on reason, individual liberty, and community.
That's really powerful. And one of the most interesting ways this came about, right, is through the creation of spaces specifically for freethinkers, like Bohemian National Cemetery in Chicago.
You got it.
Cemetery?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, think about it. For these immigrants, even death became an opportunity to express their commitment to free thought.
Okay.
Bohemian National Cemetery, it was founded in 1877.
Right.
And it wasn't just a burial ground.
Right.
It was a statement.
Okay.
So imagine this. A cemetery designed not around religious doctrines, but around inclusivity and reason.
Wow, that's really something. They were literally laying the groundwork for their values, even in death.
They were. It's remarkable.
But we're just scratching the surface here.
Right.
There's so much more to uncover.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot more to the story than just cemeteries. You're right. There's so much more. And what's remarkable? Czech free thought wasn't just personal beliefs,
Yeah.
It actually fueled this wave of social action and reform in their communities.
So they didn't just reject the old ways. They actually built something new based on their values.
Exactly. It was about action. They lived it. They didn't just talk about it. A good example are the free thought societies.
Oh.
They sprang up all over Czech communities in America.
Right.
These weren't just social clubs.
Yeah.
They were hubs for intellectual and cultural exchange.
I see.
So think lively debates, lectures on science and philosophy and even theatrical performances.
Wow. So it was a very lively scene.
This, all designed to promote critical thinking and to challenge the status quo.
That's pretty amazing when you think about where they came from, right?
Yeah.
It's a far cry from having to whisper dissent back in the Habsburg Empire.
It is. They were definitely making up for lost time.
For sure.
And this focus on self-improvement and community wasn't limited to intellectual pursuits either. There's another fascinating movement we should talk about.
Okay.
It was gaining traction alongside these free thought societies. The Sokol movement.
Ah, yes, the Sokol. I've heard about them. They're known for being very athletic and having those really striking uniforms. What exactly was their connection to free thought?
Well, it might seem surprising, but the Sokol movement actually originated in Prague.
Yeah.
And it shared a lot in common with Freethinkers. They both really emphasized physical and mental discipline, the pursuit of knowledge, and this strong sense of national pride. Sokol chapters often became real centers for Czech communities, offering gymnastic training, but also lectures, libraries, even theatrical productions.
It sounds like it was about building well-rounded individuals, strong in both mind and body.
Yes, and connected to their Czech heritage.
Right.
Exactly. For many Czech freethinkers, strength education and cultural identity, these were all interconnected.
They all work together.
Yes, and they were essential for building a thriving community.
It's pretty impressive when you think about all of this happening while they were navigating a new language and culture in America. It really speaks to their resilience and determination.
It does. And, we can't forget the huge role that the Czech language press played.
Yeah.
Newspapers like Lesatel, the Herald, and Světozor, Worldview.
Right.
These weren't just sources of news. They were platforms for debate and discussion. They gave Czech immigrants a space to grapple with complex issues.
Interesting. So in a way, they were able to hold on to their own culture and community, even as they were integrating into a new one.
Exactly. It's like they created this intellectual ecosystem.
Wow. A space where they could connect, share ideas,
Yeah.
and really challenge each other.
Yes. One article in Světozor, it was from 1903, actually criticized the American education system for being too influenced by religious dogma.
No way.
They argued for a more secular approach.
It's interesting because it kind of shows how much they were already thinking about shaping the future of their community and the nation.
It does. These publications really show how deeply engaged they were.
And it also shows how important these newspapers were, right? Like they gave them a way to share their own perspectives in a society that might not always understand or welcome them.
That's a great point. Remember, this was a time when immigrants were facing prejudice and discrimination.
Right.
The Czech language press gave them this vital platform. They could counter negative stereotypes, advocate for their rights, and contribute to the national conversation about what it actually means to be American.
It sounds like they really made the most of it.
Yeah.
So I've got free thought societies helping people grow intellectually, the Sokol movement promoting strength, and a very lively press shaping public discourse. Czech free thought really was more than just a set of beliefs.
It was.
It was about taking action. It was a force driving social change.
And that drive actually extended beyond their own community.
Oh, okay.
Czech Americans became vocal champions for a whole range of progressive causes.
Interesting. What kinds of causes?
Well, they were active in the labor movement, fighting for workers' rights and better working conditions.
Wow.
They also advocated strongly for women's suffrage. They truly believed in equal rights for everyone.
So we see that connection between free thought and social justice emerging even more clearly.
Absolutely. And they were also big supporters of secular education, arguing that public schools should be free from religious influence.
So they were really thinking ahead, thinking about the kind of society they wanted to create.
Yes. It's amazing how they were able to translate their beliefs into action.
It is. They really made their mark on American society.
They did. And one of the most striking examples of this is Anton Cermak.
Okay, remind me.
He was a Czech immigrant,
Right.
and he became the mayor of Chicago in 1931.
Oh, wow. The mayor of Chicago. That's a pretty big deal.
It is.
So how did his background in free thought play into all of this?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Did it shape his leadership style at all?
It's definitely a question worth exploring, and it's something we'll delve into as we continue to learn about Czech free thought and its impact on American history.
Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of wrap things up here. Our deep dive into Czech free thought in America has taken us from the heart of Europe all the way to the bustling cities of the U.S. We've seen how these communities built their own spaces, fueled social movements, and really fought for their values. It's quite a story. So what are the big takeaways here? What can we learn from these Czech freethinkers who dared to challenge the norms and build a new life?
I think their story is really about the power of ideas to shape lives, not just individual lives, but communities and even whole nations. These weren't just philosophies, they were principles, and they were put into action. They drove real change in American society.
Yeah, that's a good point. We talked earlier about Anton Cermak, the Czech immigrant who became the mayor of Chicago. I'm still curious, how did his free thought background actually show up in his leadership?
Well, his story is really a prime example of how these ideals had a real-world impact.
Okay.
Cermak, he was known for his commitment to social justice and progressive reforms. For instance, he championed those public works projects during the Great Depression.
Right. Providing jobs and support for struggling families. He also challenged the political machine that had dominated Chicago for so long. He pushed for more transparency and accountability in government.
It's fascinating to see how even in politics, his free thought background seems to have guided his focus, like on ethical leadership and taking care of the community.
I think so. And while we can't say for sure that every single decision he made was directly because of free thought, it's very clear that his background played a role in his worldview and leadership approach.
It's inspiring in a way, right? It shows that even in positions of power, people can still stay true to their values and work towards a better, fairer world.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder for all of us, I think. And remember that Bohemian National Cemetery, that powerful symbol we talked about, it still stands today. A real lasting testament to their legacy.
A very tangible one, yeah.
It is. It's a physical reminder of their principles, and it makes us think about how our own values shape the world around us.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's not just history, it's a call to action almost. Exactly. So the Czech free thought movement might be something that happened over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But its impact is still here.
Right. We still see it.
Their focus on critical thinking, their passion for social justice, and their strong belief in the power of community, these are all things that resonate with us today.
That's so true. We live in a world that's struggling with things like misinformation, social divisions, and a lack of trust.
It's tough.
It really is. And it's inspiring to look back at a community that so wholeheartedly embraced reason and progress. What can we learn from their experience? As individuals and as a society, what are the lessons here?
Well, I think there are a few big takeaways. The first one is that questioning the status quo is vital for progress. The Czech Freethinkers, they weren't afraid to challenge norms, whether it was religious dogma or social injustice.
They weren't afraid to rock the boat a little bit.
Not at all. The second thing is that community is key to driving change. They weren't just about individual freedom, they were about building support networks, sharing knowledge, and working together.
Collective action.
Yes, it's often the most effective way to tackle those systemic issues and create change that lasts.
And I guess lastly, their story really highlights how powerful ideas can be.
Yeah.
Their commitment to reason, education, and social justice, those things have left a mark.
A big one. An indelible mark on American society.
Well, it's pretty remarkable. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Czech free thought, I want to encourage all of you listening to really think about their story.
Yes.
How can their example inspire you? Inspire you to be engaged in your community, challenge the status quo, and maybe even make your own little corner of the world a little better.
Their legacy isn't just in history books.
Right. It's all around us.
It's in the values we cherish, the causes we fight for, and the communities we build.
Well said. Thanks for joining us today on this journey. It's been great exploring the world of Czech free thought with you all. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to make a difference.